To be or not to be? That is a question. Is it the question? I've decided to go on a journey. Aldous Sandflys is leaving port. 100 million GP, 200 million GP, 300 million GP, and so on. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Aldy's Journey, where I am traveling through different guilds in the community, looking at different levels of the game. What are people interested in? What are their frustrations? What do I think of the game modes at different levels? And what's everyone's experience? We're going to work now. There's going to be a little bit more editing in some of these videos, so they're taking a little bit longer to put together. But today we've got a very special one. I'm going to answer... What I'm going to do is I'm going to look through the Discord that the guild has, and I'm going to pick out some of the questions that people have been asking. And I'm going to try and answer them, maybe give my perspective on them, but probably more importantly, just kind of work out whether or not it's a real problem in the game that needs explained or fixed. Because really that's what we're here. We're really trying to understand what frustrations new players have, what points or pinch points people hit, and whether or not they're really damaging the game or where we can go. That makes sense? Let's go across. Look at this. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Where am I? Hi. I am better. Anyway, we're going to go through... I'm just going to have the question up here on screen and talk through it. We've only got 4 questions, so we'll do more of a discursive of maybe what overall it means, rather than necessarily a definitive question. The first question, I'd forgotten, and I always forget about this one. Any tips on credits? Feel like that's what's holding me back. And that's for a player that's around 470,000 GP. I'd forgotten about the credit crunch. It's such a weird... obviously this game is designed to create little pinch points, little frustrations that, you know what, if you just used your credit card, maybe it wouldn't be quite that frustration anymore. But this is a very strange one, though. This credit crunch has always been in the game. It was what really kind of limited everyone getting to level 85, and people would you'd get characters way faster, especially when things like the Lightspeed bundle came out, or the Hyperspeed bundle, a Hyperspeed bundle. The one you got for like $100 that then went to 50. There really isn't a way to get around this. Yes, you can buy credits, but in one of the stores, I think, but this is a strange pinch point that maybe doesn't need to be one. I think the only tips that I ever give anyone on this is don't level more than one character. Keep everyone as low as possible until you're going to start using them. So don't start leveling everyone to level 51, 52, 53. Start with the 1 or 2 most important people. Now, for those, the most important people, it depends on exactly what you're farming. Obviously, if you keep people like Ewok Elder alive, he can revive you all back. If you have a tank like GK or a tank like Mace or a tank in a team, if you can keep him alive, then potentially you win the battle. So I would focus potentially on tanks. There are 1 or 2 characters or 1 or 2 people who are essentially solo merchants. If you're lucky enough to get Nest or Wampa or Darth Vader, I know these come a little bit later, but if you look into each team, there's probably is that one key character. People like Moff Gideon, original Moff Gideon, having him super fast, having him higher up, they'll be able to take all the TM from the opponent team, and therefore really mean that your team is surviving or is going to get ahead. So I would, on this, I think don't be frightened of having one character in our team at level 85, but others at level 70 or 50. think about what that role each individual character has. The other thing is this goes away. You know, this credit crunch, almost as soon as you get to 85, or, you know, as you start to kind of unlock teams that get you into places like Credit Heist, or maybe when the speed of unlocking people slows down, then the credits kind of go away and you start getting in more credits you can never use. So it's a very, very strange one. I think it is something that CG should look at. I do think that it's a credit crunch that shouldn't be there. It's a pinch point that doesn't need to be there. And, you know, they're doing all these amazing changes to the new game to kind of add new characters in, give people more new characters. I think just giving them a more regular sort of semi-credit heist type thing, maybe before you get to level 85, maybe there's a separate event that's there that just rewards you with money, because really those are the people that need it. And it is a bit of a silly pinch point that's not really affecting anything, because as we've seen in this game, level 85 is no longer the top of the tree, you know, so we don't need to be slowing people get to level 85 unnecessarily. But it's nice to have a little crunch on it, because it means people need to make selective decisions. So, like I say, make those decisions the way that I would. You know, look at which character's actually going to make a difference more, and what the actual gearing does. You know, have a look at what the level's actually going to do to the character itself. Anyway, another question, a great question though, and I do think CG should do something about it. Next question. How do I obtain Darth Malgus just so that I'm aware? Another incredible thing that I often forget is that if you weren't around when Darth Malgus was in Conquest, and everyone was talking about Darth Malgus and how do I unlock Darth Malgus, if you weren't kind of engaged in a community, or if you weren't watching content on the internet, how on earth do you know that Darth Malgus is actually a Conquest character? Where does it say that in game? There's not like a tag. There's not an indication as to where these people came from. So it's an incredibly valuable question, because you don't know that Darth Malgus is then going to go into things like Proving Grounds, which is a terrible catch-up mechanic, and really just how much harder is it to get these characters, because if you didn't unlock them the first time around, you're then looking at things like Proving Grounds. Hopefully, eventually they start to go into shops for various currencies, but we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So yeah, I do think that if CG is going to carry on with these Conquest characters, which obviously they are, I do think they need to have a better Proving Ground type system, I would say, is probably a thing. Maybe what you should do on Proving Grounds is, if you qualify, you get 5 shards every single time, even if you beat it or not. I think there has to start being more of a kind of a speeding up the Conquest characters coming to newer players. But there also should be a tag or something. There should be an indication somewhere of where these Conquest characters came from, because they're quite meta now. You know, you look at people like, you've got the Lightspeed bundle, but how do I get Ben Solo? You know, how do I get Cat? How do I get various ships? All of these are really quite important ships as you get into the later game, and important characters in the mid game. So I think they've got to kind of look at slightly more transparency at where these come from. And it's a very valid question. If you weren't around when Darth Malgus was there, how on earth do you know he was an actual Conquest character? It's, yeah, smart. I never thought of it. I never thought of that. But yeah, more transparency, I think, would be what I would suggest. Here's a wonderful question. I can use Datacrons now. What do I do? Now, again, if you weren't around, we talked about it a little bit earlier, if you weren't around when these things were the buzz that everyone was talking about and there was a million videos, how do you use Datacrons? Datacrons have been in the game now for about maybe 12 or 13 iterations of them, I think. I can't remember exactly which season we're on. But yeah, they've really changed. So I would say that, this is a hard one to answer, but I would say that Datacrons are essentially CG's way of moving the meta around. They're sort of moving away from power creep, trying to give that variability to teams, and trying to have game modes, or PvP game modes in particular, have those kind of a little bit fresh. What do you do? Well, like I said, I think I said about 60 to 70% of Datacrons are used on offense at the lower levels. So you shouldn't come across too many defensive Datacrons initially if this is like your first one or two. The thing is, AI is not as smart as you, and the AI is not set up to use specific Datacrons differently. So the AI is just set up to play a team a certain way. If it has a Datacron on it, sometimes it makes it better. Sometimes the AI doesn't play it right, or doesn't realize the opposite team is a Datacron effectively. So I would take your Datacrons on offense. They are, even at the lower levels, they're going to add a little bit of pep to your team. They're going to give you a little bit of a boost. They do expire, so be careful. I would certainly say at the early stage at 1.6 million, I wouldn't be spending money to re-roll them, or any crystals or anything to re-roll them or upgrade them more than I naturally get. So they are good. They are good. They are going to help your roster a lot. But be aware that the sets will expire. So like I say, I think you're probably at that level. You're probably going to get maybe one or two. But another thing to do is to look at how many teams you're actually going to be able to use. Bear in mind that everyone in a team has to be at least Relic 3. So look down your roster, see which teams you have all Reliced, because if they aren't a Relic 3, you can't use a Datacron at all. So I guess that's kind of the early game, or my advice for Datacrons is you don't need to get more than you can use, because that's pointless. So count your number of Relic characters, and I wouldn't bother re-rolling them or anything, just use them as base stats, and I would use them on offense rather than defense. Yeah. Cool. Final question. I'm about to get to level 85 sooner than expected due to changes, and unlock GAC. Any advice? What an incredible question. What an exciting part of the game. Like, to unlock GAC is effectively unlocking, in my opinion, probably the best game mode, the one that I have most fun on when I stream on Welcome to Sandflys on Twitch, and the one that we share and talk about most in Discord and celebrate, along with TW. These are the two kind of ones, but GAC in particular is your personal journey, your personal battles, your personal things. So you're not relying on other people in a guild, or other people, and it's just you versus the other person. It also has a very, very good skill rating system. So no matter how good or bad or what your roster is, you kind of should find an area where you go about a 50-50 win rate. So it is tend to be competitive, and you don't tend to get stomped. If you are very engaged and you have the right comps, then you will find yourself fighting people with better rosters who aren't as good as you. So you will run into that. But my advice for people that are about to unlock GAC, well, firstly, I'd say, I think it was Calvin Austin did a video a long time ago where he looked at PvP and PvE, and the real conclusion is that because of GAC, you are always going to go about 50-50. Now, that means that there's no real incentive to invest or change your roster too much towards GAC. Because most of your rewards, or the difference in rewards that you're going to get, are going to come from PvE content. So bear that in mind. However, I would say that most people derive enjoyment from things like GAC and TW. So I would say that if I looked at the balance, whereas the change in rewards and the more unlockable things come from PvE, a lot of the enjoyment comes from PvP. So look at that balance. If I was going to unlock GAC, like I say, I'd go mostly offensive. There are teams that everyone talks about that are good starter teams, like Phoenix, Ewoks, Jawas. These are quite Genosians. These are quite good defensive teams. Don't ignore ships, because ships are going to be quite the difference maker, I should say. Like, if you can counter the fleets around you, so practice ships, and make sure you're unlocking ships, because ships are going to decide a lot of your GACs. Other characters like KRU can be quite annoying. There are some solo characters, things like Kylo Ren, OG Kylo Ren, Malik, who you wouldn't have got to yet, but Malik, Nest, Darth Vader, who I think they're also now giving out far more at the start of the game. They can solo, Darth Vader can solo bugs, even Wampa now, but again, so I'm kind of talking a little bit kind of as it progresses, but I would look at those 5 characters in particular. I derive a huge amount of enjoyment from. I mean, Wampa is still soloing things, as is Malik, at Kyber 1 levels. So, again, similar to my advice on the credits, look at those 1 or 2 characters that you're going to get a solo from. You're going to be able to kind of use to delete an entire team. Darth Vader is probably one of the first ones. So working on him, giving him a Zeta for Merciless Massacre. If he goes first before a Geonosian team and he's a high enough damage dealer, he will be able to mercilessly massacre and kill the entire Bugs team. Nest, I don't know how Nest quite goes against Ewoks now, but Nest will also be able to do some sort of work as well. So I'd look at enjoying GAC. I mean, ultimately, like I say, GAC is probably my favourite and probably the thing that most people enjoy in the game. So I would enjoy it. Enjoy your Swiggle. Enjoy your first GACs. Celebrate inside your guild. You know, probably the best thing to do when you're playing your GAC is ask for advice if you don't know a counter. Post your wins in your guild. You know, share your positivity. Share your will. You know, share how you're doing, because people are quite excited about that. But yeah, I would say that a few comps, a few teams there that are quite good starter teams, but you're probably already working on those. But I would go slightly more offensive. I would try and clear the board, because ultimately you're going to practice. You do so much GAC, you get better and better. You learn more and more counters. You learn which of your characters are better and better and better. So, and I would say also watch other people's GACs. We talked a little bit in a previous video about the GAC streaming Discord in the recruitment video. The GAC streaming Discord, I'll put a link down below. They're a great community of people who, at all different levels, who stream their GACs in a Discord server as well. So actually being able to go in there and get advice from people if you are wanting that, or just doing it yourself. Lots of different options. I think the community's here for anyone who's unlocking GAC, and it is probably, I would say, the most exciting time you get in the game. So yeah, those are the questions. 650k GP, somebody's unlocking GAC for the first time. 470 people have a credit crunch. And then around 1.6, we had a couple of questions when people are starting to get datacrons or starting to look at maybe some of the conquest characters. So that's the kind of questions that get asked at those sorts of levels in the game. And it's really interesting to see. I hope this was as interesting to you as it was to me. I hope this gave you a great perspective on what some of the other people in the community and the newer players are seeing, what sort of things they're interested in. Anyway, as always, I say, look, always ask questions, ask as many questions you want. If you've got questions, put them down below. If you've got comments, put them down below. And until the next one, may the force be with you. Look after yourself.